Welcome to another edition of the Sim Racing Garage. I'm Barry Rowland. In this episode, we'll be reviewing a handbrake from the guys at MME Motorsports, having years of experience designing and building pneumatic paddle shifter solutions for all classes of race cars. This is one of their first sim racing controller products. Time to put this handbrake through the SRG's review process and see how it does. So, let's get to it. Let's take a closer look at this handbrake from the guys at MME Motorsport. Now, MME Motorsport is located in Slovenia. Hope I'm not messing that up. But anyway, they've been doing high-performance component manufacturing for real race cars for quite a while. And they specialize in sequential shifter solutions, pneumatic sequential shifter solutions, like the paddle shifters. They have everything that you would need to build that onto an existing gearbox. So they do everything in-house. All their machining is done in-house. All of their electronic circuit design and electronic component implementation is all done in-house. So as you might imagine, they have a good opportunity to maintain the best quality control that you can instead of sending some of this stuff out to some other manufacturer and then getting it back in. So they've done a real good job with this, I think, and it shows in their experience. Of course, at the price point that this comes in at, it should be very extraordinarily good. And yeah, out of the box, it's a beautiful piece of machining. The assembly, the materials, fit and finish are impeccable, as again, we would expect at these price points. So this particular device here is made from 7075 aluminum, as is all of their sim racing controls. They have the H pattern shifter, which is also a sequential shifter, convertible, and they have a straight up sequential shifter. And we'll talk about that as we're doing the mounting here, because I'll be using that with this handbrake. It is a blue anodized aluminum here. My personal preference is red, but this blue is very nice too. And the finish is just very nice. It's smooth. There's no any kind of edge anywhere, except for right here, where this aluminum piece is embedded in the CNC piece. But all these little stylings here have been chamfered, and it's just smooth everywhere. Even the screw holes, everything is just very smooth, which is nice. And you can see the different chamfering they've done. A lot of little styling cues going on here that I like. They're not really noticeable at first, but you can see what they've done here. Obviously, we have two plates that are joining here for the housing, and they've got a little step here on this plate that steps down to the other plate. And on the back here, you can see that there is a flat piece here. And well, this might not be totally flat, but it kind of angles over here as it goes to the back. Yeah, very nicely done. The handle itself is kind of a matte silver anodization on it. And yeah, it's same as this. This is matte also, although it might show a little bit of gloss in the lights. So yeah, as soon as you pull this out of the package and have it in hand, it's a very nice piece, and you can tell it was manufactured at high quality standards. Now, on the bottom here, let me show you what's going on as far as we have a laser etched serial number, and we have two bolts that are part of the internal holding mechanism. We have 4 bolts over here on this side. We have 6mm or M6 threaded holes here for mounting. On the back here, we have a USB cable. This is 1.5 meters long, or I measured it out to be 56 inches. They're saying 60, but you know, it's not that big of a deal as far as 1.5 meter. I'm sure it's how they measure it because it's over in Europe. But this will be plenty. I've already checked it out to reach my USB hub or my PC that's on my controls cart. So I have a big rig, and typically I need a longer cable for controls to be able to reach to where it needs to be. Of course, if you have just a static rig sitting somewhere, this will be fine. Your computer's probably not that far away. Or if it is, you could always use an extension if it came to that. Now, what else can we talk about here? This handle itself here is 24 millimeters in diameter. And you can see the styling here straight down. There's no knob on the top. And this is the kind of handbrake you'll see in a rally car. You won't see a knob sitting on the top and then a thinner shaft underneath. It'll just be a straight up and down tube or knob or whatever they're using. So this relates well to that. So you can grab this in the heat of battle just about anywhere, and it feels the same. So you can get the same feel for what you're doing with your handbrake when you need to implement it. So yeah, I like what they've done there. Got some stylings here. We've got tapering down into the internals, the mechanicals down there that actually are doing the work as far as when we're pulling on it. We have an adjustment here from the factory. They set it up to where they think it should be. And if that doesn't go with what you want, then fine. You can actually adjust this. There is, see this little LED here. We have a hole next to that LED. And you just put something in there and hold it for 3 seconds. And this will turn on or flash so many times. And then what you'll do is go ahead and hold this handbrake where you want it, the new tension you want to feel, or travel, whatever the case may be. Of course, the further you bring it back, the harder it gets. Very smooth, by the way, even though it's not easy to tell exactly how this is going to feel until you have it securely bolted to a rig. So we'll talk more about that in the driving segment. But anyway, once you have that set up for calibration, then you'll just hold it to wherever you want it to be for 5 seconds. And this little green light's going to flash 5 times and you're done. Calibration all done. The USB cable also has a ferrite cable. I'm going to point that out. This is a molded in unit, so it's done at the factory. They do this instead of just a clip-on, even though clip-ons can be effective too. We have an engraved MME SimSport right there. So SimSport is going to be obviously for their sim controls, and that's going to be a department within the regular Motorsports from MME division. I would imagine that's how they're doing this. Yeah, this is, like I said, it's very well done. It's a very pretty piece to have sitting somewhere. And you can tell that a lot of thought went into what they're doing here. What else can we talk about? The weight comes in at 2 pounds and 7 ounces or 1.1 kilos. So it does have some weight to it. Now, let's talk about the dimensions on this thing. The handle height, if we go all the way from the bottom here, comes in at, like to me, about 330, almost 35 as far as total height. So this is what I would consider a full-size sim racing control. So of course the full-size controls will give us more of a immersion factor, if you will, using a full-size control in a cockpit instead of just some little thing down here that we're grabbing with our hand and our whole hand covers it. And I'm obviously all about full-size controls if you can get them. Now, the case as far as width is not that wide. Only comes in at about 55 millimeters, which is about 2 3/4 inches or 2 1/4 inches. And by the way, this comes out to be 13. I meant to say the North American, yeah, right on 13 inches, or if you're just going by inches. The length on the case is actually a little different because remember we have this step sticking out here. So let's just go with the longest and see how long this thing is as far as what it's going to cover. Now we have a mounting bracket we're going to look at in a second that's going to obviously add to these dimensions a bit. That's 95 millimeters, or finger down here, about 3 3/4 of an inch. So mounting brackets. This is what comes with, if you just order the handbrake, this is what you get. And you can see this mounting bracket has some countersunk holes in it. And we're going to be mounting this to the bottom of our handbrake. And we would put it in here like this, or depending how you're mounting it, you can put it the other way like this. They've got 2 different patterns here for the hole spacings. And you can see how it mounts that way. And the difference is which side that these holes are going to be sticking out or protruding past the footprint of your handbrake. What I mean by that is, once this is on here, I'm not sure how I'm going to mount it, to be honest. The USB will be going this way because you're pulling the handle this way, like this, right? So typically I'll have the USB, because of the reach problems I usually have with my cockpit because it's so large, I'll have the USB coming out or exiting from the front of the control if I possibly can. And that gives me these holes in the front. It gives me holes down the side here on both sides to come up with mounting solutions, which should be pretty easy. They give you some hardware with this for fastening. Let's grab the 2 different ones they give you. Remember, they're M6 holes in the case itself. So they give you a socket head cap that is 6 mil. This is about 16 millimeters long, I believe. And this one's more like 11 or 10. And this is the flathead. And of course, the reason why I have these flathead, and this is stainless, is it's going to go in like this and sit flat in our bracket. And once we put this in and it's laying flat, on whatever we're mounting it with, then yeah, it doesn't protrude anywhere. So you have a nice flat contact area. You have as much surface area contacting whatever you're mounting it to as possible. And of course, this would fit in like this to bolt to whatever you want it to. And you can go, again, down the sides, around the front, wherever the orientation is and where you want it. So I like this bracket, and I like that they include it with this. Now, if you buy the Handbrake, and then you buy the Sequential, and I'll show you this once we get to our mounting solutions, they'll give you another bracket. Now, you should be able to get this bracket. Let's say you bought the Sequential, and then later on you bought the Handbrake, then you could get this bracket from them also. So what this is a nice machine bracket. By the way, the finish on these brackets is very, very good. I don't know if I meant to say that. It's very, very smooth. The chamfering on it is very good. There's no rough edges anywhere. Again, this is meeting my expectations for the price point that these controls are coming in at. Just very well thought out and done. Now here we have the same thing. It's very slick stuff on this. Some of the slickest anodization I think I've ever felt. But anyway, this bracket will hold the sequential shifter and the Handbrake. And the sequential shifter will go here, these 4 holes, and the Handbrake will go here if you're right-handed. And you can see the angle here, the difference in the angle. So once we have the shifter sitting on here, and this is typically going to be in a straight orientation as far as the sequential. And again, once we get it mounted, we're actually mounting things. I'll show you that with the shifter on there. And the Handbrake is offset. So it sits here like this. So we can get our sequential here, and then we can grab the Handbrake and pull it directly back towards us instead of trying to reach out and grab the Handbrake. If it was straight up down like this, you have to reach out and grab it and pull it back that way. It's just more ergonomically sound in the solution here. And this is the first time I've seen a manufacturer actually think of this. If, as far as the angle, not just the double bracket, we've seen that before, but the way that they've done this so that they know what you need to do. Now, if we have a Handbrake sitting over here, we have a sequential shifter sitting here, then these are the holes that we're going to use to mount. And we'll be mounting, well, we'll go over that when we're doing the mounting. I'll pull some profile out and show you. But I'll be using this on profile. So this gives me 4 holes, M6 holes, that I can mount this to profile with. And that's going to be very secure, I would imagine. I don't suppose you get more secure than 4 M6 bolts tightened down securely into profile. So that will give us, I think, we'll see anyway. As far as any rocking or anything, we'll just have to wait and see till we get it bolted down. So again, this is the right-hand orientation. So if you're driving normally, like most people do in the world, you'd be using the right hand. But if you're somewhere driving on the left, then yeah, you'll be using your left hand. But all you have to do is flip this around, and now we have the shifter over here if I was using my left hand, and we have the Handbrake, again, canted off to the side, and we're using our left hand for that. So it's a convertible bracket. So if you buy both of these things together, they'll give it to you. If you just buy one, then this is accessible. I'm not sure what they're going to do as far as pricing. Maybe if you tell them you already have the sequential and you buy the Handbrake, they'll go ahead and put this in with your Handbrake rather than this one, or both, in case you want to mount it somewhere else, right? Right, so what else can we talk about here? I think that's about it. We'll take a look at the manual. This is a thick stock type of card on here, and it's just a basic manual here showing you what you get as far as your components that you should see in there and how to mount it. And of course, this is the calibration routine here, calibrating the pressure, and it goes through that. You can also go on their website and download the manual in a PDF form. Anything else we want to talk about? Yeah, I think that's it as far as a closer look. It's just a well-manufactured piece. It's very professionally presented in the box. They have a nice foam cutout for shipping these things in. I don't see how you could really hurt them unless you really pound on it with something, I would imagine. The guys that work in shipping, I'm sure they could come up with a way to do it. But all the parts that I've gotten so far survived quite well, as you can see. Yeah. Again, I'm looking for something here on the closer look to complain about or to mention that I would like to see done differently, but I'm having a hard time finding that in this. So, yeah. Again, at this price point, we're definitely meeting expectations with this unit. Now I'm going to go over the calibration routine that you can change the way this Handbrake feels as far as how much tension it takes to fully activate it. I have it right now at the maximum because, it's a full-size control. When I sit in my cockpit, I like to have a pretty good pull on it. course, that's subjective. Some people might like that, some not. But if you see in the game settings window above there as I'm moving this, you can see there's a little bit of a dead zone in here. See, it's not really moving yet until I get right about there. And then I'm pushing all the way back. And I haven't hit the stop yet. There's the stop. But you can see it maxes out just before we get to the physical stop. I can still move it a little bit, then the slider's not moving. And that's by design. All right, so how do I calibrate it if I don't want to have to pull it that far, which means that much pressure or tension on it? So I'll just come in here, this little hole here, next to the green LED that's always on when you have the USB plug plugged in, and you just put it in the hole there and hold it. They say 3 seconds, but it's quicker than that. So I'm pushing down a little switch in here until that light starts blinking. So now it's blinking, so it's ready to calibrate, and you have 5 seconds to do it. So if I didn't do it in 5 seconds, see how it started blinking quick? That was it. So what you want to do is go ahead and put the pin in and do it while you're ready to press it to where you want it to be. So you can utilize the full 5 seconds. So I'm going to go ahead and do that again. Now it's blinking, and I'm going to push it about halfway where it was before, kind of like this, I guess. See how that works. All right, so now I'm off the slider, and see if that picked it up. Yeah, see, now it's picking up, but now it's going to max out right there, and I still got a lot left. See how much more I have left than I did before at the stop? So that's all the bar I get by the sensor. So the sensor stops sensing at that point, but I still have that much to pull on it, which increases the pressure as far as what's required to pull it that extra distance or push it. In this case, because I'm pushing. But of course, this is backwards because of the way the LED is and the way I shoot. You would be pulling it this way. Obviously, it was in your cockpit. So it's pretty simple. So you just adjust it where you want it. Like I said, press the pin in there, wait for the flashing lights to do what you want them to do, get it where you want it, and then you're done. Pretty simple. I like it that you don't have to open up a piece of software to do this. It's just very easy to do right there in your cockpit if you just keep your pin handy. But I find that most people, once that they get this set up, you're not going to change it much. I mean, once you get it to where you really want it, experiment a little bit maybe, but once you get it there, you're probably never going to ever change it again unless, you know, something happens to the calibration inside of here, then you have to do it. So there is the calibration process. Now it's time for our look inside segment on this MME Motorsport handbrake. First thing we're going to do is take out our fasteners. We have 4 here, and we have 2 on the bottom here. Now, the casements are 2 halves. It's pretty easy to see that, but I have to say that the seams, and I went over this in the closer look, are very, very tight here, all the way around this casement, which is another testament to the close tolerances they have in the machining process when they make these. So let's go ahead and get these loose. Now what I'm going to use is a 3mm wrench here. This is a hex, obviously, and I'm just going to break them loose first, and then we'll take them out with the power driver over there to make things go a little faster. So always use this type of wrench when I first break loose a bolt, because you don't know what's going on. You want to get a feel for it when you're first removing it. At least I do. It makes it easier for me to feel where everything is. And this is coming off pretty easily. And I'm going to do the same thing on the bottom ones here, or 2 down here. Go ahead and get those loose. They seem to be coming loose pretty easily here. All right. Okay. So now I'm going to get my little power wrench out. And again, it has a 3mm socket on it. Make sure we're going the right direction. And we'll go ahead and pull these out. All right, we got them all out now. Let's go ahead and take this last one out. Now we have 2 different sizes here. The short ones are on the bottom. They look to be about 10mm in length. These look more about 20, 25 probably. And they have a shank on them. And these are all the same size. As I took them out, I was paying attention to make sure I didn't have a shorter one in one of these holes than the other hole. So when they go back in, you want to make sure they go back in the same order. In this case, it's not that important because they're all the same size of the holes they came out of. Now, the next step is to try to separate these cases. Now, remember the seams are very tight here, so there's really no way to get anything in here to pry on it that I can see. But I'm gonna try to do it by hand first, and I can move it a little bit, but not a lot. And I was kind of expecting this. You can see I'm actually getting a little gap here now. I'm imagining there's some tension on this somewhere because it is spring actuated. But there we go. There we go. It's coming apart now. We see more of our internals. And as I'm doing this, I'm watching very closely what's going on. Now I can see a spring in here already. So I'm going to be mindful of the tension that is on this casement here as I'm separating it because of that spring. You just kind of work it back and forth. I'm just doing it sideways like this in a sideways motion back and forth as I'm pulling it out. And I'm not sure which. I'm going to try to make this the side that I don't take off, that I leave everything on as far as the assembly in here, and make this shell come off because it doesn't have any holes in it. And I can see that the USB cable's coming off the bottom one. So I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing here, and hopefully it doesn't pop off and things go flying. Try to avoid that at every chance. Now, it's getting a little tough here. There's really close tolerances there. You have to be very careful how you wiggle it. You get one side further open than the other side, just a little bit, and it binds up. So again, that's just a testament to how well they've machined this. Okay. So now I'm going to keep going here. I'm going to put my finger in here where the spring is, just in case. Yeah, I think I got it now. Coming out. Okay. There we go. Ah. All right. I'll leave this in here for now. I think this is, you got to compress this spring to get it in here. Okay, leave it there. And we'll take a look at what we have here. And again, this is the 7075 machined aluminum. You can see it's anodized on the internals also. Very nicely done there. This is a piece of, looks like lock. See that little white piece in there? It looks like it's, yeah, it's just some Loctite powder in there. It came off the bolt when we took it out. But again, very nicely done here. Everything's just so nice as far as the finish. And again, at these price levels, this is what we expect to see. We have a little stud here on this side of the plate, and we have another piece here, and we have these pieces in here that look like are capturing the other part of the spring assembly. And looks like we have some pin holes here. Like I scratched some of the anodization there when I wiggled it. But you know, that's the hazards of taking things apart. At least it's inside, you'll never see it. All right, so I'll put that aside. Now we'll look at what we have here. Make sure this is seated correctly before I do anything. Push it back down. So you can see it's a pretty simple mechanism what we have here. This is obviously the spring tension that gives us the spring tension we need. We have a, we'll go ahead and pull this apart and take a better look at it. It's pivoting here on this pin. And it looks like this might be rubber in here. But like I said, once I pull it apart, we'll take a better look at that. We have shielded bearings here on this side. I imagine there's another one on the other side, and we'll take a look at that in a minute. And here's the pins that we saw match or mate to the other sides of the casement. Got one here, got one here. And that's what it helps it stay tight when we're putting it together and assembling it. We have a little cable gable. Looks like a set screw in here. It's clamping down on a piece of metal, flat metal or rounded metal inside of this piece that gives us that cable gable or stress relief, if you will, for our USB cable. Now it looks like I can just pull this thing out. So that's what I'm going to try to do here very carefully. I'm going to squeeze the spring here, all right, and take the tension off of it as I'm pulling up. And hopefully nothing goes flying around. I'm kind of wiggling it back and forth as I'm doing that. There it comes. Good. Ah, there we go. Nothing went flying. That's great. So the spring tension on here is easy enough to compress it. You can see I do it with my fingers there. So I can do that when I'm putting it back in. Remember, every time that you're taking something apart, you should be mapping in your brain how this is going to go back together, the difficulty level, or what you might have to do to get it to go back in. So let's go ahead and take this piece off. There we go. And there's our spring. And here is, yeah, this is some kind of a hard nylon. No, it's actually rubber. I can bend it. I can actually flex this a little bit. So that's our stop internally when we're pulling on it. And that's held to this piece of aluminum by a screw. Like I'm getting my fingers good and dirty on the rubber. All right. We have a circuit board in here, and we also can see the pins better now. Pin there and a pin here. And this is, again, a very clean looking circuit board inside. And we have our chip right there that's doing all the processing. And I believe this is going to be just like their shifter was when we took that apart. It has a Hall sensor set up on it. And if you look on the circuit board here, this obviously is where our USB wires are coming in. And we have our red and black for our 5 volt and our negative. And then this is the little power circuit. So we have some service mount capacitors here. We have a voltage transistor there. You can see the little heat sink piece there. See how big that piece of metal is there on that pad? That's for heat sink purposes. And of course, another capacitor on its way out to the processor. Then we have this little chip here. And based on the H pattern shifter that I've already done a review on, this is the Hall sensor chip. And again, that's a surface mount. It's very small. But you can see this is a very professionally done, well laid out circuit board here. I don't have any complaints about this. Looks very good. Now, to verify that that's what that is, the Hall sensor, we have to have a magnet somewhere for this Hall sensor to sense those magnetic fields. So, where is it? It's, let's see. Oh, there it is. And of course, we have some grease and lube on all this, so I'm going to be wiping my fingers off as I'm doing this. And this is a little pivot piece here. It pivots back and forth. And again, that's where the spring is seating. You can see the raised area there where our spring is going to be seating. And then we have the magnet. Oh, there it is. And we can see the other shielded bearing here too. And I believe that's the magnet. And there's one way to test that. This little piece here. I believe that's a magnet. If it is, it should hold my steel safety pin. I've got these little safety pins here I use for lots of things. And there you go. So there's our magnet. And again, as we move the lever back and forth, that changes the position of the magnet relative to where the chip is located here. So the magnetic field will increase or decrease. And of course, it's going to pick that up and translate that into motion when we're using our handbrake. Pretty cool. What else can we talk about here? I think that's about it. This piece here, the handle that goes in here into this big piece. Again, everything's very beefy here. See how thick that is. So I'm not sure how, I guess if you pulled the sealed bearings out, there might be a way to, there might be something in here internally that we would loosen up and then remove the shaft if we need to do some kind of maintenance on it. Because it had to be assembled, obviously. And I tried to twist it and it didn't. So I'm just going to leave it alone. Leave well enough alone. So now, obviously getting this back in, we're going to have to make sure that we get our spring back in like it was oriented before. And I'll just put that back together like this. I just want to show you guys this real quick. I'm not going to go through the whole reassembly process just to see if it can be done without too much drama. Oh, and by the way, on this plate here, I meant to show you that. This has 2 holes in it that are machined. You can see them there. And we have threads in them. And that's where the bottom is. And when we saw those other 2 bolts. So this also helps keep the halves together once we line these up and put the bolts in. Now, like I said, I want to see how hard it is to get this back in. I'm just going to put my spring back in there. You can see the spring, they've machined it out so it sits down inside of that. So that's how it retains the spring. And then, of course, we have the other piece here that we saw before that will retain the other part of the spring, like that. So make sure we turn this metal plate here right in the right orientation so that it will line up with the holes on the bottom of our case. And then I'm going to just kind of pinch it like this. I can move it a little bit and try to get this to go back in. Yeah, there we go. All right, pretty easy actually. I'm going to make sure that I push this plate all the way back flush with our casement there so that my hole lines up, and I'm going to look at that. You can see how it's kind of tilted right now because we don't have the other half on. Yeah, it's tilted. So as I put the other casement on, I'm going to have to put it on this way and squeeze it this way as I'm lining it up and trying to get this to drop into the hole that's in the middle of our shielded bearing there. So I might as well do that just to see how hard it is. So I'm going to go ahead and give us a go. So yeah, I'm looking down here, seeing how this is lining up. Let's see how I want to do this, like this. Okay. Okay. Now remember, these are offset casements, so you don't want to look at it like, oh, this has got to be even over here. It's going to be even in the back, but not in the front. So I'm going to kind of squeeze this towards me. This is not the most intuitive thing to show on video, but as I'm doing that, I'm going to try to get the other piece to line up to drop in. There it goes, I think. There we go. All right. So there it is. And all I have to do is reinstall all my fasteners, test again. You always want to test it, obviously, once you take something apart and put it back together. Make sure it's still functioning, and I'm sure it is, so, because we didn't really do much to it, did we? So there it is. I'll put my fasteners back in, torque them down where I feel it's secure, and it'll be good to go. Now let's look at how we're going to get this handbrake mounted. And of course, the handbrake, as you saw in the closer look, comes with this bracket. The sequential shifter you see in the background back there, that's what that body is, also comes with the same bracket. And the holes are the same on the bottom of here as far as spacing as they are over there on the sequential shifter. But we'll see that in another video because I'm doing two different videos, one for the handbrake, one for the shifter. The countersunk holes here. Now they are, you can see there's actually 6 total, and that's so we can flip this around. And it depends on where I'm going to want these holes on the top here to be located in reference to what is going on with the handbrake, the way it's sitting. So in this case, I would like to have those holes pointing that way. That means I need to have my handbrake down here. Now, if I have them pointing this way, and this just gives me more options for mounting. I mean, you might require that in your mounting situation. So I'll have some ability to use these 2 front holes. I'll probably just use the side holes, the ones that go on either side of this bracket. Cable getting in the way here. So I'm going to do it that way. And on the bottom here, this pattern will allow you to do that. If I put it this way, I'm going to kind of line the holes up here. I can't line the holes up. Well, I'm going to go this way. All right, so the holes line up there, but they don't line up here. You only get these 2 on the top lining up, and there's nothing here. So again, those extra holes are there so you can orient this the way you want to. And in this case, I want these holes here, the ones that aren't countersunk, ones on the bottom here, pointing this way. So I'm going to mount it like this. So I have those options. Again, it depends on your particular mounting situation, what you want to do. So to get these mounted, they do include these flathead screws you may have seen in the closer look. Stainless steel units. And they are a 4mm wrench size here. And they're M6, of course. I have a 4mm wrench right here. I'm going to preload this. Make sure I get this spacing right where I want it to be. There it is. Good. And I'll just kind of preload it like this, try to make it easier to get this thing started. And I'll take my hand brake and kind of just bring it up. I can look straight down here, obviously, and see what I'm doing. And go ahead and get one started. Not all the way in, obviously. Go ahead and see how this is going to rest. And you can see it twist a little bit, so I'm not binding anything up. And we'll load the other one. I'll go ahead and get this other top one done. Top, as far as the orientation that we're looking at right now. I'll have these on like that. And now, the holes on the bottom are kind of self-aligning at this point. So easy enough just to grab the other 2 bolts and get them in. Again, everything's fitting very well here. All the machining is very precise. All the threads cut are nice. I'm not having to force any bolts in or anything. And it's little things like this that stick out to me when I'm assembling anything. I mean, some things, you know, they just don't thread right. I've had to chase threads before. But this is just very good machining. These guys know what they're doing because it just goes in so well. All right. So there's our result. We have our bracket on. And of course, the flathead screws are down in their countersunk holes, so they will not interfere with anything. And here's how I'm going to mount mine. I'm going to take a piece of 40 series profile because I'm mounting to my 40 series profile cockpit. I got 2 pieces of this, and this is typically how I will mount things. And I'm simulating it here with this 4080 piece of 40 series. that represent the shifter mount that I have on the cockpit. Typically what I'll do here is just put these like this. Pretty easy, right? Then we put our T-nuts in here, tighten everything down, and there you go. Now, if I was going to mount something here like this and never take it off, or just be a final solution, which never happens here, unfortunately, at the SRG because I'm always changing things around, I would put another corner bracket underneath here, either side, doesn't matter, so that it would give me some anti-twist compensation. And the reason I'm doing that, and typically you wouldn't need to do that, but because of the way these corner brackets are working, and I'll show you that in a minute, it'll make a little clearer picture for you once we get there. Now, the only problem here is you only got so far you can go here to bring these channels to a certain distance. Can't go any further than that, obviously, right? So if I take my handbrake and I put it up here, I can get the front holes lined up, but as you can see back here, we got a problem. Not going to work. So what do? So you have to pull one of the brackets off. Simple enough. Let me see if I got get my 6 here. Which one of these I had loose before? Wasn't that one. Wasn't that one. It was this one. There we go. See, the last one never fails. So what I would do is take one of these out. Simple enough. Keep the T-nut in there. Now, when I get these mounted together like this, we can see that I now have spacing for the holes in the front here, and I have spacing, well, I'm going to have to slide it out a little bit, and that lines up. So now I can run my M6 bolts in here into the T-nuts that I already have. And by the way, you will have to source your own 6mm T-nuts if you have a profile cockpit, and then bolt it down. And then, of course, I would already have, once I get my spacing here, I would go back in and put my bolts in here and tighten them down, and then go ahead and mount it, because you can't get to them, obviously. You can't get to these guys here once you have this attached to the top of it. Now, that's the spacing that I need to make that happen. And you can see there's just no way that corner bracket's going in there. So now I have an extra corner bracket, though. So what I'll do is, in these situations, is I'll take this corner bracket and put it over here like this. Now, these corner brackets, because of the way they're oriented, I had to take the tabs off of one side. See how that's flat there? If I flip it over, you can see the tabs that are on there. And these are anti-rotation tabs. But because of the way this mounts here, and this is a good example, obviously, it has to have the tabs off to be able to mount flush with this profile. But the tabs on the bottom are left on so that they can go in this channel. And again, the anti-rotation feature is there. So I would put this on the bottom like this, very simple. Another T-nut, obviously, in there to secure it. And then I could just run the flat side of this up against here, like this. Let's go ahead and take this off. Take the bolt out, like that. So now I have this one in here helping support the front bar now. And you could even put one on the other side if you wanted to really make things as secure as you could possibly get them. So that's the option. Have it that distance. Now I'm going to move that bracket and put it over here. So I still have 2 brackets securing this piece of profile to my 4080 profile. Simple, right? So what we're going to do, now that I figured out what we need to do, and I've got my plate mounted, and we saw how that went, all I'm going to do is I've already got my T-nuts in here because I used this particular configuration that you see here, mount all of my shifters. And of course, I can just increase or decrease the distance as required. So what we'll do is go ahead and get this mounted and see what it looks like. Here is our MME handbrake securely mounted to our rig. And it's just like we saw on the bench. We have these 2 pieces of 40 series mounted perpendicularly to the main mounting segment of this cockpit. And we have the bracket secured with the M6 bolts that are in the kit. That's what I used. I did have to use my own M6 T-nuts. You will need those if you're mounting to profile. And yeah, very securely mounted. And you can see because of the gap I had over here, we've now moved that corner bracket, like I said, underneath the front one and securely attached to the main 4080 piece there. So it feels pretty secure. I don't know how well this is going to convey. It's a very long handle on this. But yeah, you can really get a feel for what you're going to be sensing when you're using this once it's securely mounted to the frame like this. And yeah, I like what I feel. Again, I'm going to have to wait till we get into the car and actually using this to see how well I can control the brakes when I'm using them. And see how well you get a feel for it. But very securely mounted. So yeah, we'll go ahead and get to the next segment. MME Motorsport sent me both the sequential shifter and the handbrake at the same time. So at this point of their individual reviews, I'm going to introduce the multi-bracket, or the bracket that you'll be using to attach them in tandem, if you want to do it that way. Totally up to you. So you'll see this part of the review, or this segment, in both of those reviews, because it really just overlaps and relates. Now, if you saw a closer look in both of these reviews, you saw this bracket that they sent me. Now, if you order the handbrake and the sequential, they'll send you this bracket. I'm not sure if they send you this bracket too that comes with the individual ones. I would imagine they would, just in case you want to do something different later on. But this is their multi side-by-side tandem mount. So what we have here is a pattern for the handbrake, and you see it says HB over there. Get it in the light. And over here, it says right hand and then sequential. So if you drive on the right hand of the road and your driving position or your actual steering wheel is on the left side of the car, this is what you'll be using. Now, if you drive on the left side of the road, just flip it this way and the orientation changes. Now, how we're going to mount it to profile is going to be these 4 holes here, because the rest of these holes are going to be attaching to the bottom of our controls. So pretty simple so far. Now, there is an issue with profile mounting. Not really an issue, but it's something that, you know, I like to show you guys everything so you can make as informed decision as possible on whether these solutions will work for you. So if I took these 4 holes here and mounted it to a profile, and this is how I would mount it, directly like that. Obviously, this is straight up and down on a piece of profile, 4080, which is how I'll be mounting it. So I ran into an issue here in test fitting this. I'll show you what it is. I'm a little surprised that I did run into this issue. First off, I'm going to use T-nuts, obviously, in the channels. And the T-nuts have a shape to them. We have the hole on one side, and on the other side it's all solid, but that's also where they put the spring ball part of our spring ball T-nut, right? I'm going to go ahead and put this in here, in the middle. These end holes here, it doesn't matter. I'm just going to go ahead and roll this down real quick and show you what's going on. It's going quick enough. All right. Now what I'm going to do is orient this on the short, or as much as I can, with the long piece going this way and the short one going this way, because I'm worried about bumping into my hole down there for the other T-nut. How close that is already. I'm just going to hand tighten or finger tighten this so it doesn't move. Then I'm going to hold up another T-nut that I would be using on another bolt going through the other side, right? So if I put that and bump it into the other T-nut, flip it around, I got a problem. See that? It's not lining up with the hole. So this is the first thing that's dealing with the MME Motorsport equipment that I've run into an issue. So you can mount it to something else if you weren't using T-nuts, right? But that's not going to work there, so that means only 3 of these I could get in here. Or there's other ways around it. I'll show you what I mean. But it takes away some of the versatility of my roll-in T-nuts. Sometimes you have to suffer, right? This is another type of T-nut here. This one has a piece of metal on it. See if I can push that down out of the way. Yeah, okay. That's from the manufacturing press. The little burr was sticking up. Yeah, I pushed it down. I'll go ahead and hit that with a file or something and knock it off before I actually install it. So, back to what we were talking about. This may be able to line up. You see how thin it is on both sides of that hole? If I hold that here, I really don't need the bolt to demonstrate this, I think. Now we can see that I have a hole that works. See that? So I can get my M6 bolt in there. But it's bumping up against that, which is not the problem. Or it's really not a problem. It's just something you have to do. Now, because this is a twist in, but there's no way for me to get this to drop in like I normally would use a twist in type of T-nut, because if I do it this way, so they just drop in, this would slide in and this would slide in, or I could just put this one in and then put this one in and then get my bolts. I can drop this in, but I'll have to turn it this way in the channel and try to get my bolt in that way, which could be a bit precarious, or I could loosen up all the T-nuts and just slide them into the profile. But that kind of takes away from the benefit of having the spring ball nuts. So if I slide this in here like this, I could pre-install this and slide it in also, because it'll fit in the channel like this. That's the way these work. Once you tighten them down, they're supposed to spin into it. Or I can do it this way, which I'm probably going to try first just to see if it works. And just kind of slide this in here and push it in to where I'm kind of looking down here, and I'm going to turn it, or use something that's not magnetized. Because I'm trying to turn it with that, it's not working out too well. Anyway, I'm going to turn it, get it to turn, if I can, once it bumps up against that other T-nut. So anyway, it's kind of fiddly if you're going to do it this way. All right, let me try to pull this back and just turn it anyway. Oh, there is a burr on here, so that might be inhibiting me a little bit here. If I can get it to turn. There we go. But you can see, yeah, not the most graceful solution here, is it? I'm doing all this. Now that I have it sideways, I can actually push this in here carefully, and I'm going to push on this side of the channel so it won't twist back around on me. And I'll just keep pushing it in there until I can see the hole, which I can. Easy, right? So I can still do the drop in and get this to work. Just like that. And of course, the other holes in this bracket, there's no issue, right? These are going to be fine. Plenty of room for T-nuts on those. So this is how I'm going to get around it, because I would like to have as many of the bolts in here as I possibly can. But I would like to see the guys at MME Motorsport make that spacing a little bit wider between these two holes. In fact, I'm not sure why they had it this way. I'm sure they were thinking of something on their end. But yeah, I like to see more spacing, so I could just use regular T-nuts, wrench out of the way, in all 4 of these holes. But I can still get it done, as you can see. So there's a will, there's a way kind of thing, right? Now, if I loosen both of these up, of course, it will slide back out. And I could have slid it in to begin with the other 2 T-nuts in these holes too. And yeah, probably would have been a little bit, I don't know, wouldn't have been either way. I guess it really doesn't matter at the end of the day. But yeah, that's how we would end up with it. And a T-nut up here and another one down here, and we're done. And that's how I'm going to do it. Right, so let me take these off. Now that we've done that, found out what our issue is for me when mounting it to profile. Again, I'm going to recommend to them that they widen those holes a bit. I don't know, another, 5 to 10 millimeters would do the trick easy. No big deal. Right, get you back out of the way. So now we're going to be mounting the handbrake and the sequential. Very simple stuff here. Well, kind of simple. I figured I would mount the sequential first. And if you notice the handbrake, I like the way they did this. They have this at an angle. So the shifter will be here, and then we'll have the handbrake sitting off at an angle that you're reaching out past the shifter, or on the other side of the shifter at a good angle to pull it back to you. More ergonomic. I like that they thought that through. So yeah, no complaints about that part. So what I'll do is go ahead and just start putting this together and see how we go. Now remember, I'm going to be using the M6 bolts that they include in both of these kits. So we got 4 that came with sequential, we got 4 that came with the handbrake, and you use those. But again, you're going to have to source your own hardware for the holes for mounting to the profile or whatever it is that you're mounting to. So I'm just going to put this in here, and these are 5 millimeters. They're M6 bolts, but they're 5 millimeter socket head cap units. And I have a 5 millimeter wrench here that I'll be using. And I'll just look straight down here while it's sitting sideways, and hopefully it's high enough. Or is it? Okay. Going in well enough there. Again, the assembly of all this, as far as their components so far, has been very, very easy. I mean, everything just goes in so nicely. They do a good job with this. And once this is in, as I pointed out in the single mount, you don't have to tighten it down much. But once this is in, these holes, there's no jiggling in this bracket. These holes are just lined up. I mean, they're dead on. The reason I mention that is because there's plenty of times when I've not had that situation where I had to leave the bracket real loose, sloppy loose even, to get the bolt started, and then you run them all in together. And yeah, it's just one of those things that you go, well, this wasn't really precision CNC machine, was it? But this one was. And we'll see if the same relates to the brake once we get that on, but I kind of think it will. I'll go ahead and give these a final tighten before I mount them with a regular 5mm that looks like this, although this is a 6mm. All right, so we've got that one on. Now we need 4 more of these 6mm socket head caps. And I'm going to mount it like this. I'm sure that's the way they intended, with these pieces here pointing towards me or towards the driver. I'm going to go ahead and now lay this down, and we'll preload one of our M6 bolts and just put on the wrench, put it through the hole. I'll bring up the component and start my screwing in sequence. We'll go this one first. Again, very easy to go in. I come over here and grab this one cross panel from it, or cross a ways from it, as far as the pattern is concerned. And we'll go ahead and get these in. And we'll go ahead and get the other 2 in. And the holes, again, should be lining directly up. And look at that. No worries. No playing around here. Just get it done. Look at that. I appreciate the little things. And when I have a little trouble, I also like to point that out, like with these holes here. Just a little bit wider. Yeah, everything would work great. All right, so now we got these. Again, I'm going to do a final torque on them before I get it installed. But this is how it's going to look. So my sequential shifter is like this. And of course, I'll be close to me like this, and I'll be pulling on it, right? And then I can reach over here and grab my handbrake and pull it. So it's going to be a very ergonomic angle there. I really like the way they thought this through and didn't just put it side by side. I've had other shifters with handbrake combos from companies come in, and it was just a side by side straight orientation. This, and I always like to do this with all of my handbrakes, and some of the other ones that I've used, like my hydraulic one, I've done the same thing. I mounted at an angle, and it's just a little bit easier, more ergonomic to pull it to you that way. So there you go. Now we have the unit all assembled. Now what we'll do is go ahead and put our T-nuts in. I'll slide this thing into our profile that's over on my rig for shifting duties, and we'll come back and see how that looks. All right, so now we have the MME Motorsport Sequential and Handbrake securely mounted with their double or tandem side-by-side bracket. I was able to get all 4 bolts in, our M6 bolts, with the T-nuts. I did have to, surprisingly, use another one of these T-nuts, because I'm going to show you a shot of it here. The middle ones we got sorted with this type of T-nut and a regular spring ball, but then the spring ball interfered with the nut, or rather not the other nut going in to support the other bolt. And again, you can see that in the picture. So again, maybe if they made the bracket, 10 millimeters wider on each side, just 20 more millimeters, and change the spacing on the bolts, I think that would sort this out where you could just use regular spring ball T-nuts on all 4 holes. That's up to them to do. We did get the job done, and remember, they don't give you any fastening hardware for this bracket, so you're up to your own devices to get it mounted. So there it is. All right, now I do like the angle that the handbrake is sitting at. It makes it very ergonomic when pulling this handbrake when you're sitting over here in the seat. I've already been testing it, and it's a very solid mount, by the way. And you can see, I'm going to go ahead and see if I can get you guys to see what I'm doing here. This sequential is very stiff. As far as the pressure goes, you can make it less, obviously, but I like it right where it's at. You can smack it, and it feels really stiff. So it gives you a lot of tactile feedback when you're smacking this thing around and using it while you're driving. The handbrake, oh, by the way, it is noisy, though, as you can hear. It's not quite a sequential shifter. But when you get to full-size controls, a lot of times this is what you're going to get. You're going to get a louder control. And this is definitely going to be loud. So be advised. And this one over here, the handbrake, is quiet. Again, I like the way this handbrake feels, but we're going to have to wait and see how precise I can get as far as my braking when I'm using it and see how that feels when you're driving the car. But yeah, it looks like it's going to work. And it does have just a little bit of a notch there when we turn it, but not much. All right, so we finally got this mounted, and the seat, by the way, you can see how close that is. I had to loosen up my corner brackets down here that hold my seat rail and slide them towards the left to get that to work. Where's the other one? There it is. But that's the beauty of profile, right? We can just move it over a few millimeters and make things work. That's when I really like profile cockpits. Right, so everything's mounted. It's a little bit before, depending on how you're looking at it, or after the wheel rim as far as the plane. And that's typically where I like mine. Everybody's a little different when it comes to this stuff. So yeah, whatever makes you feel comfortable in longer stints, then that's what I recommend you do. But this is where I ended up with it. So we got everything securely mounted now. We were successful. Now it's time to get in and have some fun in the driving segment. We're in iRacing at Sonoma in the Rallycross track, of course, and we're running the Ford Fiesta. This is a great place to test my handbrakes, and I try to be consistent, so I use the same track all the time for a baseline measurement, so I can tell the differences straight away between one controller and next. I would consider this a full-size control. It's very tall. The lever is 1 inch, or almost 1 inch in diameter, or 24 millimeters in diameter, and so it feels good in hand when you're pulling on it. And the more comfortable you can get on a lever, be it a shifter lever or a handbrake lever, the more consistent you'll be with it, and the faster you can come up to speed with being consistent. And this handbrake lends itself to that pretty well. It's very stiff as far as the construction, 70-75 aluminum throughout, as are all these controls that I've reviewed so far from MME Motorsports. So it gives you that tactile feel that a mushy handbrake won't. If you got side-to-side play in the lever, that kind of thing, it lends to a lack of stiffness or a little bit of flex feel in it, or maybe even just kind of mushy. Depends on how you want to describe it. So this one, I was able to come up to speed pretty quick. I have it adjusted to the maximum as far as the tension on it, and that's where I was comfortable with it. And if you guys watch the adjustment or calibration segment of this review, you know what I'm talking about. So again, you can adjust it, but it's all done electronically in the application, or not in the application, but internally to the handbrake itself. And really the only way to change that would be to change the spring, and that means taking the thing apart. If you saw the look inside, you can see what was involved in that. I think most could do it, but from a manufacturer's perspective, I would think, yeah, they wouldn't want you to have different springs shipped with the handbrake and have everybody taking them apart and putting different springs in them. But I came up to speed pretty quick on this. And again, this is very subjective when it comes to feel. And yeah, you know, just because I like something certainly doesn't mean you're going to feel the same way about it. So you have to take all this with a grain of salt when I say that I like this or that about it, as with any review on any sim racing equipment. So yeah, I came up to speed real quick. I like the constant or consistent feel that this platform has on this control, being as stiff as it is and rotating on these shielded bearings. If you guys saw the look inside, it's a very robust build on this handbrake, just like I said before, all the rest of the controls that MME Motorsports is currently manufacturing for their sim sport line. So yeah, it's just a handbrake at the end of the day though, right? Not a whole lot you can say about it. It's just a matter of, can you come up to a place where you're comfortable pulling on it a little bit and a lot, and feel like that you're controlling the rear wheels as far as slowing them down or locking them completely up, and being able to feel the differences between those things. It's a vague thing, really, and of course it depends on the person using it, what they feel or don't feel. And I think this is a very good full-size control for a handbrake. The bracket that's the tandem mount you see, of course, here I'm using their sequential shifter with this handbrake. I'd like to see it wider or longer depending on the orientation you're talking about, and so that we can get full-size M8 T-nuts in there, and I didn't have to use those smaller ones, even though it did get the job done. And the bracket seems to be very stiff. It didn't give any as I was using it, as far as even with the shifter, and I'm doing another review on the shifter, so we'll talk about that one later. But yeah, it's, as you can see, me pulling on it, nothing's moving there, so it's getting the job done as you would imagine it should. So overall, yeah, I don't have a lot to complain about with this handbrake. Maybe having different springs so that you could change them out. But again, like I said, from a manufacturer's perspective, I probably wouldn't want people doing that to this. But you could go look at the look inside segment and see how that's done. And you might be able to source your own springs, really, if you wanted to. So there it is. The handbrake's doing a good job. I can be very consistent with it. I can put the car exactly where I need to every time. And really, that's what any handbrake should be doing at the end of the day. Final thoughts on the MME Motorsports handbrake. Out of the box, this controller presents as a professionally manufactured unit. Constructed from 7075 aluminum, it is as stiff a control that you can get as far as non-moving but structural supporting pieces are concerned. The finish is hard anodized blue and is applied on all surfaces, both outside and inside. In hand, the 24mm diameter brake lever feels substantial and offers a finish that provides a good gripping surface, which allows for consistent pulls. The resistance is provided by a spring inside the casement. The spring is not intended to be swapped out with other springs, but it does look like it could be done without too much drama if you wanted to. To change the amount of resistance you like in the handbrake stroke, an easy calibration process is provided. The handbrake is controlled via a Hall sensor setup mounted on a professional-looking circuit board. This senses the magnetic field strength provided by the magnet embedded in the lever pivot assembly. The mounting plate that comes with the handbrake is also a solid unit made from 7075 aluminum, providing a very solid mount if you have a sturdy place to mount it. I also use the available double mount that you get if you order one of MME's shifters at the same time you order the handbrake. It provides a convenient place to mount both controllers in tandem and has a nice angled mount feature for the handbrake, making for more ergonomic pulling motions. However, this bracket needs to be a tad longer to allow it to accommodate full-sized M8 T-nuts without them interfering with each other or sticking out beyond the edges in the profiles channels. I spoke with the guys at MME about this, and they said they would incorporate the required changes in all of the Tandem brackets moving forward. In use, the MME handbrake provided me with a consistent, firm feel that allowed me to get comfortable with it very quickly. I did have it adjusted to the maximum pull pressure that it could give me. This handbrake comes in at €399 plus VAT, or around $445 plus shipping. At this price point, MME has positioned this unit at the higher end of the sim racing controller market. Overall, I believe this is a well-constructed and performing handbrake that meets the expectations that this price point sets. I'm Barry Rowland. Thanks again for watching the Sim Racing Garage channel. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. And if you would like to help support what I do here at the SRG, visit my website at simracinggarage.com.